Ragnarok is a huge map that contains a lot of challenges. From harsh weather conditions to brutal caves, there's a lot of things being thrown your way. In this video, I'll share 30 very detailed tips and tricks that I've learned from my 1,000+ hours of playing Ragnarok on Ark Survival Evolved, and my week of research in Ascended. By the end, you'll know everything that you need to know to become a pro at one of Ark's best maps. As always, if I forget something or you disagree with anything, please comment it down below. I'm going to order these tips in a way that goes from early to late game content, and I'll leave video chapters so you can skip around to the stuff that you actually need. Without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy my full guide to playing Ark Ragnarok Ascended. Choosing where you spawn isn't insanely important, but some areas are definitely much better than others. The southwest areas of the map are the worst choice for sure. The base locations and islands are fun, but with more resources and buffs to the other 3 spawn areas in ASA, the worst choice from ASE got even more behind. The jungle spawns are okay. It has Viking Bay nearby, which is definitely nice because of the recent buffs to that area, but the jungle itself still falls short due to lacking early game access to great mid to late game items and tames. Viking Bay is a solid choice. You get really good early game gear, but you just aren't super close to late game creatures and have no way of getting them without relocating. Out of the 4 choices, the Highlands is by far the best. It offers access to creatures in the early game that are really good, and has a ton of other perks including really great resource spawns, and a lot of tech that you can use to get ahead really quickly. If you know what you're doing, the Highlands might be the best spawn in any map in Ark. I'll cover these best 2 early game choices in my next 2 points, but just know the jungle and the southwest areas really not the best picks. If you choose to start in Viking Bay, I totally get it. There's 2 locations on the beach that have an insane amount of good loot crates, which will give you metal tools right off the rip. They also have a lot of crates underwater if you don't get really good metal tools from those, so you're basically guaranteed to start with at least a metal pick and a metal hatchet. On screen now are the coordinates for the 2 best spots to get these crates in the early game on the Viking Bay beaches. They're very close to the Viking Bay spawns, and they're so good. Viking Bay also offers a lot of metal, obsidian, crystal, and organic polymer in the caves and nearby resource areas. There's also beaver dams nearby. Just know for now that there is a plethora of resources nearby, and this will not be a concern for you at all. You also have access to pteranodons, and you can easily go get Argies because they're very close by. It also has all the normal farming creatures like the Anki and Dodic in the jungle area that's right next door, so it's very easy to get started and have a pretty chill start to your playthrough. If you start with the Highlands instead, grabbing the Equus is your first priority. All you need to get an Equus is to be level 10 and to collect rock carrots out of the floor, which are absolutely everywhere in the Highlands. On screen now you can see an image of what the rock carrots look like in the ground. Just look for them. You'll see at least a couple when you're running around. Once you get the Equus, that's basically the key to kicking the Highlands ass. You need the Equus for 3 things. Firstly, you need to knock out a pteranodon and tame one with the Equus. The Equus rear kick will easily knock out a pteranodon after you bullet it. Once you knock out the pteranodon, use the Equus to go and kill a bunch of trikes and carbonemus that are around the Highlands. When you kill these, you'll get a bunch of keratin and you can use it to make the pteranodon saddle. And thirdly, you're going to have to use the Equus to farm narcotics so you can go tame other stuff as you progress through the game. The Equus saddle is also a mortar and pestle, so you can use the Equus to craft the narcotics for you. You can even get the spoiled meat from the dead Basilosaurus corpses that are on the beach. This saves even more time in the early game. These dead basilos on the beach are also really good for hide and oil in the early game, which is super helpful too. One of the main reasons the Highlands stands out as the best spawn region in this map by far is that there's wyverns and bison here. These are 2 of the best creatures on the map, and coincidentally, you're about to use what you've done so far if you're following these steps to get both of them with ease. First, let's talk about how to get the bison most easily. The bison is an aggressive wild creature that spawns all over the Highlands and the Highlands Island that was just added in the top right. It's a creature that spawns most commonly in packs, and it's extremely aggressive. For bison up to level 75, the best way to knock it out is actually just to trap it inside of some billboards. Wooden or metal work for this application, and then you use the rear kick with the Equus to knock it out. Obviously, if you're trying to knock out a bison with an Equus and it's not trapped, it will absolutely wreck your Equus. The reason I said level 75 was the cap for knocking it out with an Equus is simply because at higher levels than that, the percent chance of death for the bison goes up exponentially. You can see on screen now that at level 75, there's only a 1% chance of killing a bison when you're knocking it out with an Equus. Below 75 is basically 0, and at level 150, there's an 100% chance to kill, so you're pretty much not getting any value out of knocking it out strictly with the Equus after that level. If you want a simpler and more consistent way to knock it out though, just make a bunch of tranks. You can farm berries with the Equus, you have a mortar and pestle on your saddle, and there's a ton of metal nearby so you can easily get the metal tools and the crossbow to knock it out. If the bison is level 150, it only takes 32 shots from your crossbow to knock out. And if you're dealing with multiple bison that are aggressive at the same time, simply trap the one you want and then run the other ones away. The Equus is faster than the wild bison. Be very careful though, if they do get to you and hit you, they will dismount you, they will launch you, and it will hurt a lot. Once you knock it out, just be ready to have a couple narcotics on you because they do drop torpor pretty quickly. If you're on 1x, it'll take a while with crops, but it's still not super bad. And if you're on 3x, you only need 54 narcotics if you're taming it with crops in the early game on max level. Now that you know how to get bison, go get one male and one female at least so you can breed them and produce milk in the female's radial menu every hour. The female only produces milk for you when it has had a baby, so that's really important to know. You're going to need the milk for the next step. Now that you have the bison, go get wyverns. The early game way to get wyverns is to get a pteranodon of pretty much any level. Obviously, a higher level makes it easier with better stamina and better HP just as an insurance, but you can do it with anything. Fly around the highlands until you find a bronto or a diplodocus and bait that bronto or diplodocus next to the wyvern trench. The wyvern trench is in the ballpark of 2571 if you weren't aware, by the way. And then just simply canvas the area, make sure there's no wyverns directly below you, and then fly down. What you're looking for here is you're looking for one wyvern egg of any level. It doesn't matter in this case because all you need is to get a wyvern. Once you have your first wyvern raised up, stealing more eggs for all 4 varieties of wyvern is going to be much easier. In the clip in the background, you can see that I find a poison wyvern egg. I don't really care that it's level 15. I'm just going to grab it and I'm going to leave. I've already baited the bronto nearby, so my exit strategy is very clear. You don't even need the bronto technically. Realistically, you could just sacrifice the pteranodon, die, and then go back on the equus after your pteranodon dies from the wyverns and just grab the egg off the corpse. Both of these methods are very equally viable. It really doesn't matter if you lose one pteranodon getting a wyvern. It's very worth a sacrifice. But yeah, once you get the egg and you escape very, very easily, you can see on this clip that I'm literally just sitting around making fun of the wyverns for how dumb they are. It's so easy. You can just drop the egg on the floor, put a ton of standing torches next to it to heat up the egg, and then you can use the bison milk from tip 4 to raise up the wyvern. Then you have your very own wyvern and you can go around this huge map wrecking everything. The wyvern is fast, has good weight, and is really strong, so it's a great tame to have in the early game, especially on a map like Ragnarok where there's a ton of value in traveling around the map to farm stuff like cementing paste, silica pearls, rare flowers, and organic polymer. If you're more of a fan of the ice wyvern than the other 3 variants, there's a lot of spawns that you can see on screen now in the coordinates for the locations of the eggs in the murder snow. In Ark Evolved, they only spawned in the murder snow, but actually in Ark Ascended, they added more spawns to the other snow biomes, so it's much easier to get them there now. There is more ice wyvern spawning, so do beware. Go on a fast flyer like a griffin to get these or another wyvern, but they are more attainable, especially if you're on a creature that's faster than wyverns than they were before. In the other 2 biomes, they're just on the mountain peaks, and in the murder snow, the coordinates were already on screen earlier, so you should be good to go. I will warn you though, if you're going into the murder snow, do it during the day, because at nighttime, you're gonna freeze to death. You'll still be freezing during the day, but you'll at least not freeze nearly as fast, and bring good fur. With the early game stuff out of the way, let's get into the full resource guide for Ragnarok. This map has a ton of resources, so there's other spots on the map besides what I'm describing, but these are the best spots in my opinion. There's 8 spots on the map that I think are excellent for metal. First is at 18.9, 59.3, all over the volcanic biome. There is a ridiculous amount of metal here, and it's all pretty close by to each other, so it's very fast to farm. 18.1, 79.1 has metal inside of this cave that's in the highlands. This is the cave I was talking about earlier that you can farm in the early game if you start in the highlands. 20.4, 48.3 has metal in a mountain and in the cave below. This is just a really good spot. There's a ton of resources here. 22.7, 31.1 has metal inside of this cave. There's not as much here, but it's a great spot for the early game, especially because it's right next to Viking Bay. 37.3, 43.1 is an approximation, but there is a ton of metal all over the tops of the canyon peaks. There's just so much here, and it's really easy to farm. It's right in the center of the map too, so you can farm it pretty conveniently regardless of where your base is. 49.7, 71.3 is the best spot for metal on the map. It's this entire mountain region. There is just so much here. There's a lot of areas around the map that you can build in that going here is the best choice for because it's pretty centralized. There's literally too much here to farm. You will slot cap your Anki. And 79.9, 61.2 has metal all over this cave and on top of the mountain. Really great spot as well. The reason I'm listing so many spots is because this map is huge, so you really don't want to have to travel to one spot that's excellent. The mountain range at 49.7, 71.3 is the best, but it's not the best if you live far to the west side of the map because the travel time is so much longer. There's 4 spots on the map specifically that I love to farm obsidian at. First is at 23.3, 62.5 on top of the volcano. This also happens to be the best spot on the map by far to get sulfur. You can see the sulfur is in these yellow rocks. This cave also has more obsidian inside of it if you need more. At 18.1, 79.1, there's also obsidian inside of this cave in the highlands. At 20.4, 48.3, this metal mountain from earlier that I showed near the Viking Bay spawn area also has obsidian inside of the cave portion. 49.7, 71.3 is also the best mountain range in the game for farming obsidian. It was the best for metal, it's the best for obsidian, and spoiler alert, it's also the best for crystal. And even though there's 4 really good spots for obsidian, I would really recommend only going for organic polymer on this map for the most part. It's far easier to farm. Obviously, you need obsidian for more than just the polymer crafting stuff, but I'd recommend not really using it for polymer that much. There's 6 very good spots to farm crystal on the map. First is at 19.7, 78.5. This area is right next to that metal and obsidian cave in the highlands I talked about before, and it's very good to farm, especially in the early game. 29.7, 32.6 has a cave that includes penguins, oil nodes, and crystal in the ice biome. This is not the murder snow, so it's not super cold, and this is a great place to check out on a regular basis. 34.3, 50.2 contains a crystal cave on the side of the canyon. There's also clay at the end of this cave, which is these brown little rocks on the ground, which are great to collect too. Yet again, the mountain range at 49.7, 71.3 is just fantastic. It's easily a top spot on the map for farming crystal as well, and it's also really good, of course, for metal and obsidian, so just go here really often. It's fantastic. 55.1, 56.9 has the classic crystal waterfall cave that we all know about. Lots of crystal in here, pretty central to the map, great spot. And lastly, at 79.9, 61.2, that metal mountain I showed you earlier in the desert biome, there's also crystal in the cave below it. There's a ton here as well. This is a fantastic spot to farm if you live on the south side of the map to save time. Up next is the 3 best beaver dam locations on the map. These are great for cementing paste. They're very good for rare flowers. I know people keep talking about these new rare flower collectible areas around the map. Don't even bother with them. You get way more than enough rare flowers from the beaver dams to need to worry about other alternative farming methods. And you get a nice amount of silica pearls and rare mushrooms too. The 3 best silica pearl locations are in the redwoods at 37.4, 76.9 across these rivers. This doesn't spawn any giant beaver dams, but it does spawn a ton of the smaller ones. 13.2, 86 in the new Highlands Island. This does spawn giant beaver dams. There's not that many small beaver dams, and there's only a couple of big ones, but this is still a great spot to farm. And the best spot on the map by far for beaver dams is 24.5, 42.6 next to the Viking Bay Swamp. This area has a ton of small and big beaver dams. There's 2 lakes that you can get the beaver dams from. And if you cycle around the map and farm all 3 of these whenever they respawn, and make sure to drop the wood when you're done farming them so you can actually get new beaver dams cycled in for more resources, this will be more than enough for your cementing paste, rare flower, and rare mushroom needs for an entire playthrough. And it'll be a really nice boost to the amount of silica pearls you get. Up next, I have silica and black pearls. For silica pearls, there's 2 really great spots. One is you can just swim through the entire river in the canyon and get all the silica pearls there. If you're on the back of an angler, you can easily slot cap yourself with it if you have good melee damage. On screen now, you can see what 5 minutes of swimming through this canyon looks like inside of my angler's inventory, and this is a wild tame low level with 0 melee damage pumped. And number 2 is you can go to 2238 in Viking Bay and then go down under the ship inside of this cave. There is a ridiculous amount of pearls here too. And this isn't even going to mention the silica pearls that you'll get when you farm the beaver dams, which is a really nice supplemental amount. For black pearls at 2238 in Viking Bay, you can get an absolute ton. And then you can also get a lot of black pearls in the entire northwest side of the map in the ocean. 9.7, 18.5 is one of my favorite spots, but there's plenty like this right in this area. There's also other locations for black pearls on the map, but I just prefer these 2. On screen now, you can see where the other black pearls spawn. They're very plentiful on this map. Get an angler, it's really worth your time. There's 3 very effective methods for farming organic polymer on this map. One is killing penguins, one is killing crabs, and one is farming the new organic polymer aberration flowers. Killing penguins is the simplest. You can just go to that cave I described earlier at 29.7, 32.6 and kill the plentiful amount of penguins in the cave for organic polymer. There's 3 spots on the map you can find Karkinos to farm. One is the most easy to find, which is in the South Island that was just added. The coordinates to this island are 93.4, 49.2, and Karkinos spawn in the cove. The second choice is going to the carnivorous caverns. The most accessible entrance is at 17.6, 42.7. Karkinos spawn very plentifully in the back of this cave. And option 3 is going to the mushroom cave, which has been revamped to an aberration area. The coordinates for this are at 8, 22.6 underwater. For organic polymer flowers, there's 4 very decent spots. You can go to the cove I just described for Karkinos. You can go to the mushroom cave I just described for Karkinos. Or you can enter the South Wyvern Trench at 70.9, 43.6, which is the best spot on the map for these by far, but is dangerous. Your last choice is going to 22.7, 31.1 in the Viking Bay Cave. There's a couple of flowers here as well. In my opinion, you either want to go into the Wyvern Trench and farm flowers, or you want to go to the Carnivorous Cavern and just kill a ton of Karkinos. There's a lot of oil around the entire map, but there's 4 spots in particular that I really like. Yet again, that cave at 29.7, 32.6 in the snow biome has a lot of oil rocks in it. And 3 underwater locations that I like for oil are at 22, 33.8. This is in the Viking Bay water next to the Black Pearls. 61.7, 25.8. This area is off to the southwest of the map, but there's just an incredible amount of oil here. Easily the best spot on the map, in my opinion, to farm oil underwater. And I also like going to 10.4, 25.0 up in the top left of the map. There's a lot of oil and black pearls in this area, so I usually farm them at the same time. You can just go down with a Dunkleosteus and have an angler on passive following you, and then bring a pack of Zipfactinus or Megalodons around to kill everything in the area. There's not an insane amount of hostile creatures down here, but having that pack of aggressive creatures with you to kill everything while your Dunkleosteus and angler are on passive and just farming is really easy. I'll end out this resource guide with a couple of general tips before moving on. Throughout the entire volcano biome, you can knock down trees for charcoal. On screen now you can see the entire area where charcoal is obtainable through trees. On the new Redwoods Island at 46.7, 90.3, this is the best spot on the map by far to make a sap farm. There's redwood trees here and it's an extremely safe area, and it really looks great as well. And for silk and cactus, the best spot in my opinion is generally just going to the desert because you can get both at the same time. They're both pretty easy to find. They're kind of all over the place. On screen now you can see the spawn locations for both cactus and silk. I don't think I really missed any resources. If I somehow did miss a resource, just comment it and I'll tell you where it is. I would mention blue gems and fungal wood, but there's not currently any farmable versions of those resources on the map, so I can't cover it. My assumption is it'll be farmable in the mushroom cave and the carnivorous caverns, where the Carcinos and the organic polymer flowers are, but I'm not fully sure because they're not there yet. Getting XP can be pretty tough on Ragnarok because there's no explorer nodes, but there are two really effective methods. The more universal method is just going to the canyon and killing a ton of Spinos in the bottom. My recommendation is using a creature like the Griffin for this. The Griffin does incredible damage, especially if you do a dive bomb into a level out before you hit. The way the Griffin's damage scales is if you're diving down or you're just normally attacking, you're not going to do that much more damage. But if you've already dived down and then you leveled off and you have that momentum glide thing, if you attack during that glide, you do about 10 times the amount of damage your normal attack does. You can also optimize this if you do it super effectively, where you can get multiple swings per go around on a creature, so you can kill these Spinos really quickly. Doing this basically doubles or triples the amount of damage you're doing when you're already doing 10 times the amount of damage a regular Griffin attack does, when the Griffin already does pretty good damage. Killing the Spinos is so effective because there's so many spawning in the canyon, so you can go there, kill a bunch, leave, come back later, and they will all be respawned, and you'll get to farm more for more XP. This is the most common method people use for farming XP from my knowledge on this map, but in my opinion is the second best choice. If you do end up going for this method, just be careful not to get dismounted by hitting the water. That will be painful. There's a lot of wild Spinos and they will not be pleased with you. The other best XP option is just killing a ton of wyverns. Luckily, there's actually a foolproof method for killing wyverns in the air with a lightning wyvern. When you're on a lightning wyvern, all you need to do is pick either going left or right and then fly in tight circles. The lightning wyvern has the exact same turn radius as the other three wyverns in the game and the alpha wyvern. So when you're flying in exact circles, the other wyverns will be following you and won't be able to hit you with their breath because the wyvern AI basically can't shoot as far to the side as you can. If you're aiming far left or far right on the lightning wyvern, you will simply hit everything without it ever hitting you. You can basically use this to your advantage because the lightning wyvern that you're controlling can shoot far to the left or right, whatever way you're turning. So you can basically kill all these wyverns that are trying to chase you without ever getting hit. The background of this clip shows me doing it on an alpha wyvern. This is even better. This alpha wyvern had too much HP for me to kill it in one go, but I basically just landed, tanked a couple of hits when I was regaining stamina, and then went back up in the air and kept going. Killing alpha wyverns is exceptionally good for XP. You basically get 60 levels off the rip on your creature. And killing alpha wyverns gives you 50 wyvern milk, which is extremely good if you're raising multiple wyverns at once. I know the bison gives you a lot of milk too, but 50 wyvern milk is absolutely ridiculous. I should also mention this works perfectly against large packs of wyverns too. Even if you have 5 to 6 chasing you, this will work. One thing I've said in previous videos, which I do stand by, is on certain maps like the island, if you're looking for a utility creature or something you just need really badly, accepting a low level for the creature and then going back to get a higher level later is generally an okay idea. Ragnarok is the exception to this rule though. Ragnarok is notorious for having incredibly high creature levels all around the map. You'll literally see a level 130 plus every 4 creatures when you're running around. So on Ragnarok specifically, do not settle for low level creatures. I know on my channel previously I've said to do this if you really need a utility creature, but it's a really big waste of time on this map. Another big difference on Ragnarok compared to other maps is there's a ton of spawn regions for every creature. For example, the Thylacoleo, which is notorious for spawning in the redwoods, also spawns in the desert and the southwest island regions on this map, and they're way easier to tame in those 2 spots. I did cover every spawn region for the most important tames on this map in my top 10 creatures video that's linked at the end of this video. That'll give you a really good head start because you can basically see where all the important stuff actually spawns and you can make decisions based on where you are on the map to where you want to go tame stuff. But definitely keep an open mind on Ragnarok. Don't just go to the redwoods for a Thyla. That's not a great idea. Ark Unity is generally a really good resource for creature spawn maps. The map is so new that it does miss a couple of things right now, but give it a week or two and it should be pretty good. Excluding the Drakeling, there's 3 really good ways to farm drops on Ragnarok. 2 of the best ways to farm drops are inside of caves, which I'll get into during the entire huge cave section of this video. But the other way is to farm desert drops. There's 5 desert drops on the map. The coordinates for them are 59.7, 76.5, 63.2, 78.1, 83.9, 77, 70.4, 76.5, and the last crate is off on its own at 79.7, 51.9. All these chords are exact. If you're on the chords, that's where the drop spawns. I'd recommend you farm these crates either in the exact order I gave or the exact reverse order, so you can go either clockwise or counterclockwise. And I'd also recommend farming them at night because the desert is way cooler then and it's much more manageable. It's also easier to see the drops at night if it's one of your first runs. The drops glow up red, so they're pretty easy to see if it's dark out. The other drop on the map that's really good to farm is the treasure chest in Viking Bay. One thing I should have mentioned earlier for the desert drop section is that you need to be level 80 for all the desert drops and the treasure chests. You can see on screen now exactly where the treasure chest is. It isn't spawned in on my screen because for some reason it's just not there for me, but this is where it spawns. This can give you ridiculously good items like capped blueprints for good weapons, so you definitely want to come check it out. It's in the water in Viking Bay from the area I mentioned earlier in the video with all the black pearls in the oil. My last tip before I go on to the gauntlet of artifacts this map has is about transferring. If you're looking to transfer your character in PvP on this map, do not use red or blue obelisk. These are death traps. If you try to use them, you're probably going to lose all your most important stuff. If you have a choice, use drops. Even green obelisk is better. The reason red and blue ob are so bad is because they're very commonly camped. There's water right next to the obelisk, so somebody can just sit on a capper and jump you right when you enter the terminal. And you're basically a sitting duck. There's many places people can hide, camp nearby, camp in the water. It's just a nightmare. Don't even bother. Green ob is also not a very good choice because people can still hide around and jump you, but it's not as bad because there's no water element. It's also not camped that much, luckily, because most people are camping red or blue ob, so green ob is an okay choice. There's really no feeling worse in Ark than getting all your most important stuff stolen because somebody was camping you, so don't let it happen to you. Alright, it's time for the artifacts guide. There's 10 artifacts on the map. I'm going to break them down into all the locations. There's 6 different spots on the map that you can get artifacts in, and you need all 10 to summon any tier of the boss. The artifact of the Cunning and the artifact of the Immune are inside the Carnivorous Caverns. There's 5 entrances to the Carnivorous Caverns. The underwater entrance is at 21.8, 33.2. The 3 land entrances are at 17.5, 42.7, which is what I usually use, 18.8, 48.1, and 21.8, 42. And you can also enter the caverns from the castle entrance as well, but I'm not even going to give you the coordinates because that's such a bad choice. This cave has Megalosaurus, high-level bugs, Megalania, and Karkinos in it, and the artifacts are really easy to get with grappling hooks or Thyla or Megalania. The artifact of the Cunning is at 20.346 in an elevated location, which is why you'll want the climbing creature or grapples. And the artifact of the Immune is at 23.7, 44.6, which is much easier to get to. My pick for this cave is the Megalania, actually. You can just climb over everything on the roof and grab the artifacts before dipping. There's nothing really good down here besides an insane amount of organic polymer that you can farm. But if you're just here for the artifacts, just use a Megalania, climb on the roof, get your artifact, and get out. The artifact of the Devourer is also pretty simple to get. You just have to go down to the Tuzo Trench at 47.1, 2.5. This also happens to be the best spot on the map to get Tuzo Tentacles. My creature recommendation for this is something that can take out a Tuzo without getting grabbed, because there are eels down here. Something like the Dinosuchus, Basilosaurus, or Tuzo is a great choice. You're going to have to run into at least one Tuzo and at least one eel on your way down to the artifact, so just be ready for both. The artifact of the Strong is definitely the easiest to get on this map. It's located in the Southern Wyvern Trench at 69.1, 42.2 in the back of the trench. You can either use a raft and just swim through the water portion to get to this little side area here and grapple up to the artifact, or you can just use a flyer and fly back out. There's really not that many wyverns in this area, and there's no wyverns that spawn directly on the artifact, so if you get past them to get into the artifact, you're probably going to be able to get out with it. Realistically, using a wyvern is the easiest choice. Just go in, grab the artifact, and fly back out. Wyverns don't spawn directly on top of this anyway. The only creature that spawns really close to the artifact is the Megalania, which just ignore it. It really doesn't matter, or you can just shoot it if you don't want to get rabies. This is by far the easiest out of the 10. I'm not going to waste more time here. The artifact of the Hunter is in the Lava Golem Jungle Cave, and the coords for the 2 entrances are at 18.2, 28.4, and 18.6, 26.8. The artifact of the hunter is located at 21.5, 27.2. The cave portion is easy if you're kitted with a few grapples, parachutes, antidote for the bats, and avoid the insta-kill lava. The boss fight is also optional, but I do highly recommend it. The lava golem arena is located at 21.6, 26.9 behind these crystals in the artifact room that you need to break. This cave is very dangerous in PvP because there's a ton of choke points here that are highly contested all the time. The boss fight's also been reworked a good bit. It can now walk out of the lava pool, which is a bit trickier than it used to be, so the best spot has changed slightly. The old strategy was just to go up on the cliff to the side here, but now you have to go up to the top of the arena on the obelisk instead for the easiest kill. Now that the lava golem is able to leave the pool, it can throw from a lot more angles, so being completely protected is pretty important. You have to grapple to the roof of the arena instead of to the obelisk as well, because you can't grapple to the top of the obelisk, it just doesn't let you. Using a velo is still viable too if you're able to throw out the cryo on top of the arena, but most official servers block using this, so a shotgun or a rocket launcher is the way to go. Earlier in the video when I mentioned 2 caves having really good loot drops, this is one of the caves I was talking about. There's a really good amount of mid and high tier drops throughout the cave, and there's 4 really great red drops at the end of the lava golem boss fight once you kill the boss. These drops are insanely good, but they're not quite as good as the Ice Worm Queen. One more thing I should note too is that you don't have to go down onto the lava golem now to grab stuff out of its inventory. The drops for both this boss and the Ice Worm boss both just spread around the arena in red drop forms now, which is a bit more convenient. The other really good cave for drops, and in my opinion the best spot for drops on this map, is the Artifact of the Pack Cave, aka the Ice Worm Queen Cave. We talked about this cave earlier in the video because it has penguins, oil, and crystal in it, but behind this one waterfall you can actually find a huge cave area. My main recommendation before you go here is to get really good fur from the Lava Golem Cave. The Lava Golem Cave gives fur pretty often, so at least get a couple of good pieces and then bring either an otter or a pyroman with you, whatever you have. These will give you bonus insulation, and the cave is a crouch cave, so you do want to have at least something like a shoulder pet to give you a slight boost. I'd also recommend running this cave during the day to make it a bit warmer. It does actually make a difference here. And if you are able to use cryopods, definitely bring a Thyla for the second half of the cave. One more thing you can use for some bonus insulation is actually drinking wyvern or bison milk. One of the hidden benefits of consuming milk is to get insulation bonuses for a temporary amount of time. The milk does have a really fast spoil timer, but if you're ready to use it and you actually bring it straight to the cave, this can give you good value. And you also definitely need to bring med brews. In terms of the cave breakdown, there's a ton of blue drops at the entrance portion that you can fly around and grab. The only threat in this area of the cave is dire bears that are super high level, but you can avoid them pretty easily. And once you go down into the main cave, there's yellow and red drops throughout the entire thing, and the main threat there is ice worms. Ice worms do a lot of damage, have a lot of HP, and the best way to deal with them is having a shield ready for when they pop out of the ground and do one attack. Your shield will basically tank the first attack for you, and then you pull out your shotgun and kill the ice worm ASAP. One more thing I should mention for this cave is having a high durability shield and a strong shotgun is so useful. Yet again, if you have a Thyla, this is also great because the Thyla is tanky and can deal a bleed damage to these high HP targets. And it's also really good for the Ice Worm Queen boss. But most of the advice I'm giving is assuming you don't have the Thyla, because the Thyla makes the cave about twice as easy. Once you get through the cave and you're at the final waterfall drop down, be ready before you go down. Once you get down there, the Ice Worm Queen's going to approach you and it will get a first hit off unless you have a shield ready. This first hit comes out ridiculously quick. Don't be super worried if it does hit you once. Just make sure you're full health before the fight by using med brews, and also make sure to use med brews during the fight to restore the HP that you do lose. You basically just want to shotgun down the boss as fast as physically possible. If you go too far away from the ice worm, it'll dig back into the ground and chase you around. So you want to stay at a perfect distance where it can't reach you with hits, but it also thinks it can, so it's not burrowing. The system for drops with this boss is the exact same as the lava golem. Once you kill it, 4 red drops will spawn around the arena that you can go grab. You're also able to go get the artifact of the pack after you kill the Ice Worm Queen boss at 33.6, 43.4, which is off to the side. Make sure you don't leave the cave before you grab the artifact. I've done this multiple times and it's super annoying. There's a pretty common anti-mesh glitch at the end of this cave as well. If you do get anti-mesh and you lose your stuff, the summon ID code for this artifact is cheat space GFI space primal item artifact underscore 02 space 1 space 1 space 0. The Fjordhawk is the only way to counter this anti-meshing issue, and it's just not in the game yet. The Labyrinth Cave is at 51.6, 77.7, and it contains the last 4 artifacts that are required to summon the boss. These 4 artifacts include the Artifact of the Skylord at 47.8, 78.9, the Artifact of the Clever at 48, 78.6, the Artifact of the Massive at 49, 79.5, and the Artifact of the Devious at 49, 79.5. Full disclosure, I strongly recommend watching an entire guide for this cave specifically. I'm not going to go into the entire detail because this video would double in length for me doing that. I do have 4 general tips though. First, to actually enter the cave by going into the boat in the middle of the first room, you need to enter the code DRAKAR. You can see the pathing for this if you rewatch up till now in the section if you missed it. You basically have to enter Draka and then find this hidden button in the U room. Usually this button has crates in front of it, but I already broke it with my pickaxe before recording here. And then you click the R in the room right next door. My second tip is avoiding square tiles on the floor in any room. These are pretty much always traps. My third tip is going slow for basically everything besides that one room with the timed slamming doors. There's a lot of spikes and traps everywhere in this cave, so just be careful and take it slow if you're doing it by yourself. And my final small pointers for the sacrifice room. I recommend bringing a light pet in here because I think the light pet pathing to get to the final room of the cave is much easier than the non-light pet pathing. This may just be preference, but I recommend using a Shinehorn or a Featherlight, which can be tamed in the South Wyvern Trench for this purpose. If you're not in the mood to do these kind of annoying puzzles, or you've already done them before in a previous game and you just really don't want to redo them, you have 2 choices. 1, you can just transfer the artifacts over from another map, and 2, you can just use the spawn codes on screen. I'm not a huge fan of spawn codes normally, but this cave is easily the least fun cave in the entire game, so I totally do not blame you if you want to skip it. Alright, now let's get into some general tips for all the caves on Ragnarok. Number 1 is bringing an insane amount of sleeping bags with you. Using sleeping bags as you go through any cave in the game is generally a good idea, and the Ragnarok caves are much harder than the average cave, so it's even better here. Sleeping bags are super underrated, and they're legitimately a viable method of taking on the toughest caves in the game. They just shine so well on Ragnarok, especially in the ice cave if you're freezing to death. Just place down a sleeping bag next to you, freeze to death, respawn, and you have full HP again. My second general cave tip is bringing a lot of consumables with you. Stuff like antidotes or milk are really good for preventing disease. Custom crafted curries for tough caves and intense weather areas like the murder snow on this map are really helpful in general. Freya curry most notably provides hypothermal insulation that's very valuable, especially in the ice cave. And cactus broth and focal chili are both really great choices for pretty much every tough cave. Cactus broth makes you harder to see from enemies, and focal chili gives you a 25% movement speed buff. Med brews are also just mandatory for the tough 3 caves I described. You're literally begging to die if you don't bring med brews to the jungle cave, ice cave, and labyrinth. My last tip is about cave progression. In my opinion, you should farm the lava cave a absolute ton to get really good fur, flak, shields, shotguns, and other good gear prior to taking on the ice cave and labyrinth especially. The lava golem gives you really good drops. The only reason it doesn't give you better drops than the ice worm in my opinion is because the ice worm's item pool is a lot better. What this means basically is there's not as much room for getting kind of useless items from the ice worm cave, but this by no means makes the jungle cave bad for loot. The actual quality of items that the lava cave can give you is just on par with it, and it can give you really useful stuff like fur and weapons, so I definitely recommend farming this in the early game and mid game before taking on these tough late game objectives. It'll make stuff like the ice cave and the labyrinth way easier, and it'll also make the rest of the gameplay easier because Ragnarok has a lot of tough stuff on it, so having really good gear is helpful. The jungle cave is also just substantially easier than the other 2 caves that I described. And the only other way to get loot that's on par with these high tier caves is the Drakeling, which I'm really not going to get into just because it's paid DLC and I think that's lame. My last tip is all about the boss. The boss fight on this map is tough. Noon attack spawns ice worms, has an insane 1.2 million HP on alpha difficulty, and the ice worms it summons have 15k HP each. Noon attack also is equipped with a strong ice breath and the manticore spike attack in its arsenal, and it flies around the map regularly, which stalls out the fight and makes it even tougher. All these things combined make it a boss you really need to prepare for, and it makes the Uteranus basically a must bring. The Uteranus gives percent buffs to your creature, so over a super long fight like the noon attack fight, this percent makes all the difference in the world. The Uteranus is basically always a must bring even on easier fights that get over much quicker, and bringing it for this fight is that much more important. It's just super crucial. I think the Bison is probably my favorite pick for this boss as well, surprisingly. The high speed paired with its really good stats and fantastic 30% pack buff from both the damage and damage resistance makes it a very great choice. They're also really common around the map and easy to tame right from the start like I mentioned earlier, so you'll have all playthrough long to breed them to get good mutations. Breeding them also gives you the side effect of getting bison milk, so it's basically always worth breeding bison the entire playthrough, and then at the end of the day, you just happen to be left with a boss killer. If you ask me, it's a win-win. The boss also drops 550 element, which is excellent, and it gives you basically all the tech grams you'd ever want besides the tech turret, tech helmet, and tech boots. Thank you to all my members for supporting the channel. To thank you for watching this far, here's a bonus tip. Watch my top 10 creatures video for Ragnarok linked on screen now. With these two videos combined, you'll have all the knowledge you need about Ragnarok to become a pro at one of Ark's best maps. See you there, peace.